Hi, everyone. Welcome to Polaris. Polaris by AnyRoad. This is a series of interviews with marketing leaders on how to build impactful, lasting relationships with consumers. I'm Daniel Yaffe, the Chief Operating Officer and co-founder of AnyRoad. We're an experiential data platform for brands to scale and optimize customer experiences that change behavior. And today, we're chatting with Francisco Crespo, the former Chief Growth Officer of Coca-Cola. Francisco, welcome. If you can take the first, it's wonderful to have you as our esteemed first guest of Polaris. If you can just start briefly with your background, how you got into the Chief Growth Officer role at Coca-Cola, and a little bit about the discipline within Coca-Cola.
Sure. I guess I started in South America. I worked up the ranks of marketing, so I had early on in my career to learn about brands and consumers and how do you create a love affair between those two. I was lent to a bottler, so that basically means that at a point I had to turn strategy into simple things that can be executed by people that have 4 or 5 minutes in every outlet. And I think that was very important. And eventually I became a general manager, just trying to understand how all the functions are weaved in and support creating value for society, and obviously in a P&L capturing value for shareholders. And then an operator. I was a business unit president for the South Cone of Latin America, and I was then the BU president for Mexico business unit, which is the second largest business unit for the company. And then at that point, you really have to set direction and ensure that you're able to deliver results. And at some point, James called me and said, I know you're an operator, please don't say no. I want to invite you into corporate. And corporate is more about not only setting direction, but working on guidelines and governance and how those define a good space for the operators to have all the freedom they need to customize strategy. So that is in 30 seconds how 32 years happened. And I think that for us, it was super important to create a growth agenda. If you cannot see growth, you're not going to get it. It's super hard to get things you don't see. So establishing how do we get more consumers, how do we expand the usage moments for our brands, and then ensuring that we were thinking about how to continuously create edge, relevant differentiation for our brands that would capture more consumers into the franchise and provide them reasons for them to use the brand in more occasions. And I think that was a super interesting path. When we began this, we were at the bottom of our peer group, growing 2%. And at the end of last year, we posted high single-digit growth. We were number 2 in our peer group, and Coca-Cola trademark, a 132-year-old trademark, had the best year in a decade. So I think that summarizes a little bit of what growth was during that time.
That's absolutely amazing. That's congrats on that. I'd love to dive in a little bit. So when you think about growth, that's generally done with numbers, right? It's all going to be numbers and growth of sales and growth of the brand. When you talk about emotions and creating emotional experiences, there aren't really numbers per se. So I'm curious how you guys measured emotional engagement. What metrics were you guys using internally to really bring those two together, the art and the science?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So I think that there's an important distinction to make. People use products to satisfy their needs, but they buy into brands because they believe in the values that they represent, and they like the feelings and the emotions that are attached to that relation with that brand. There's very few, if any, other powerful thing to create value as a brand. Having a powerful brand creates value, and I think that when you're trying to talk about the abstract and conceptual things that human empathy requires for you to create a proper brand purpose, centered in a human truth around the occasion where your product is used, it's very hard to put a number. You know, it's a little bit like gravity. You don't really see gravity. What you see is the effect of gravity on objects falling towards Earth, right? You cannot see love. I mean, I have not seen it physically. I see the effect. I see the effect of how it enables you to change. It enables you to do things for other people. And brand love, is the same. You cannot really see it, but that abstract, at least you should be able to identify who loves your brand and who doesn't, and if the direction of travel is the right one. If you're getting more people in or more people out, that's the minimum. The fact that you do qualitative research and that there's stuff that cannot have a number towards it does not mean that it doesn't have a method and a discipline.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. I love how you weave a little bit of poetry into that as well, which is great. Speaking of which, I'm curious if you have examples from CocaCola and your time at CocaCola that really take these experiences and meld the art with the science. Like, are there examples of activations or experience that you and your teams created that really brought those together beautifully?
I think that there are a lot of experiences. Coca-Cola is such an incredible brand. At the end of the day, in the most simple terms, Coca-Cola uplifts every consumer for them to see the joy in the world and the good in each other. That's simple, no more. Obviously, it is centered around occasions like sharing a meal, sharing a moment, sharing a break, and that's where people connect. And you can see, I think, super interesting advertiser around the Happiness Factory, where you could see how the values were translated. You know, there is these famous examples where we put two vending machines at opposite sides of two super antagonistic soccer teams. And the vending machine was not for you to get a Coke, but for you to give the other team a Coke. And we put obviously cameras in them. And it was fascinating to see that at the beginning they will shout their own, beliefs that they are going to beat the other, but eventually they will click and the other guy will say thank you, and that bridges people together. And I think that there are several examples of those. We once put a vending machine that was so high that you need your friends to lift you up so you could be able to click and get Cokes for everybody. But the ones that I like the most are those that have the occasion, because it's very hard for you to be authentic, and you can choose a relevant value, but you need to be authentic for people to believe that you have a role in that one. And that's why the ones around eating together, the ones around sharing food, I think have been superb. And you still see it if you go to, if you watch advertising, you will see that there's still stories there telling how sharing food together with people you love or you care, even or with people you don't know, but then you suddenly have something in common, is very special, and Coke is the glue that holds that together. Now, storytelling is fantastic because it can convey feelings and emotions, which are important to create brands. Experience beyond feelings and emotions, it can create memories, and that is sublime. And that's why you need to work everything around. You need to be sure that you are providing enough experiences, content, enough around all the media and the channels for your consumers to be able to fall in love with your brand. And that is, I think, what we get paid for.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you were creating these experiences and working with your agencies and your teams, I'm curious what metrics you relied upon, and also how you maybe use those metrics or use that data to actually improve the experience or iterate the experience throughout time.
So I think that you can talk about a vast array of different metrics. For me, the most important is how many consumers do we have? Because by definition, the population minus the consumers you have is your opportunity, right? So you got to start with, okay, how many consumers do we have? And being incredibly empathic about the non-consumers. A lot of times we end up creating our experiences, our messages, our offerings, our pricing, just to continue making happy the ones that are already inside, the ones that already love us. Our task is to make them even happier and to help them find other occasions in which they can use our product. But at the same time, we have to be bringing inside those that, for whatever reason, are not just quite there. They just don't love you enough at the moment. Then obviously you need to understand what are the perception, what are the attributes that are relevant for the occasion in which you are trying to build your edge. So things like refreshment goes well with food, to share with friends, makes me feel good about myself. You know, you will define what are the metrics, and you will continuously be checking the direction of travel. It might not be perfect, but at least you gotta know if you have more people believing that or less. And then I think that that obviously the execution, right? There are a huge amount of variables that can tell you if you're really making it easier for consumers to experience your brand. Do you have enough items out there for them, enough offerings for them? Do you have them in enough amount of, within arm reach of desire, in enough outlets? And you know, you do have an array of metrics that will allow you to understand if your branding is getting better and if your execution is getting better. And if those two are getting better, probably you are making your brand better.
Totally makes sense. Chief Growth Officer role, I mean, is a unique role, right? And a lot of companies, you know, it is fairly new into the discipline. I'm curious your advice for somebody who's potentially stepping into that role, and you know, what does the future of that role look like in enterprises?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I really think that the role appeared before the job description was made. And I know that that a lot of companies would agree with that, and I know that James would agree with that as well, because I think that in essence, the idea is that you divide labor to scale up. That's what organizations have done for years. But today, consumers and shoppers are expecting for brands to bring a cohesive and coherent set of experiences. Think about this. If you fly, you are flying, your body is transported probably with 7 sigma, probably beyond 6 sigma. I mean, they put so much effort in ensuring that you arrive safe and alive. But your baggage, that's probably traveling 3 sigma. It gets lost every now and then. And then if you see the app, if it is about getting a seat, probably 5 sigma, 6 sigma, very good place. But if you want to rebook your ticket, probably you have to go and talk to somebody, and that's a 1 sigma, 2 sigma. The thing is, you really need to work in a way in which all these experiences and all these places where consumers touch the brand are at the same level. And for that, you need an agenda that connects all the pieces. And that's why customer and commercial leadership, marketing, knowledge and insights, the innovation agenda, digital transformation, when they are housed together, it is a little bit easier to break the silos and connect them. Now, being honest, you don't need to make that happen. A chief growth officer can help, but it is not the only way of getting it done. You can find ways for teams to collaborate and form in different ways and ensure that they are not working in the silos. And as long as that happens, you know, who cares? But the important thing is that consumers are getting an experience that is all around, all encompassing, and it's at a supreme level, and is creating for more consumers to fall in love with the brand, and for the consumers that are inside of the brand to want more of it in their lives.
That's great. This actually brings in a question that we had submitted from Beth Silver, which is, how do you talk to the rest of the C-suite about building emotional experience?
Hello? Daniel?
Francisco?
Yes, there you are. How do you
Perfect.
talk about to the C-suite about building emotional connections? I think that was the question.
Exactly. And driving experiences. I mean, you were the C-suite, so you obviously had a unique conversation, unique communication, but how would one convince the CEO, the CMO, other C-suite about the importance and the role of emotional connection through experiences?
I think that it all begins with what we were saying. If you just do products, products just connect in a very rational way with consumers, you know, and reason can take you to conclusion, but only emotions take you to commitment. And that's why brands that have emotions attached to them and those feelings are brands that normally are able to escape from the normal elasticity of the product, are able to create loyalty beyond reason. And I think that there's a huge amount of value into that. And value not only in economical terms, value in the things that you are capable of doing, because then you make of your purpose something that creates value for the planet and for the world and for other people, and then you find that you are doing something meaningful with your life. But if you're only selling a product, it's going to be very hard for you to achieve that level. And I think that anybody in the C-suite wants to do something worth of their best self, and they want to produce the best possible results, and they want to be the best at what they do. Building strong brands is probably the best way of getting that done.
That's huge. I know a little bit about this from talking to you previously, but the role of emotional experiences at Coca-Cola was huge. I don't know if you're able to speak a little bit to, you know, how much of what Coca-Cola is doing as far as marketing and how important it is and the scale at which it was happening globally.
I think it has always been huge. I mean, if you think about it, 60 years ago, somebody in the Coca-Cola company believed that Christmas was super important. Seeing the good in each other, the joy in the world, uplifting people, Christmas was important. And that's why they charged Hat Ensemble to bring and personify Santa Claus in a way that could be there present for everybody. That's why it's red and white, you know, it's not kind of a coincidence. But you had to believe that you were capable of creating that level of emotions and feelings centered on such a beautiful value of the time of the year where you want to give something to other people. And you just enjoy seeing kids opening their presents. It's not about me. It's more about the family and the togetherness. And you could say the same of why Coca-Cola is the first sponsor of the Olympics. It's just fair play, so important. Having nations to compete in a way that doesn't jeopardize anybody's life, but on the contrary, makes humanity live to their best. You know, those are things that you have to believe that do connect with the values of a brand, to put the money before you really quite understand how you can use it and activate it. FIFA World Cup is another example. And then you get smart marketeers, you know, okay, FIFA World Cup, we're a sponsor, but then we take the trophy tour. The cup that the teams win in the Soccer World Cup is toured on 91 cities and over 50 countries. So it touches consumers. Consumers can see the cup by themselves, and they can connect to it by seeing world champions carried in their hands, and they can see all the memorabilia attached to it. So there's so much of these on a brand that then you understand why Coke is a little magic. It goes beyond reason.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it was really built into the DNA of the brand from the beginning.
Indeed.
Great.
Absolutely.
We want to, I know we're already approaching the last 10 minutes. I want to open up if there are questions, please submit them through Zoom. We will try to get to a couple of them.
Ones.
What was that?
Only the easy ones.
Only the easy ones. We have a couple that people submitted also during the registration process, so we'll start there. But if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them. This one's coming from Brooke Dobson, and adding a little bit to this, but it's kind of a two-part question, which is, one is, how did brands historically measure emotion? And how is this changing? So how do you measure the success of connecting with your consumers?
Okay, so there are several angles on that question. As I said, you cannot really measure an emotion, love, but you can identify if people do love your brand or if people don't love your brand, and then you can try and go and understand what are the triggers. You try to use a hypothesis. Okay, so what is the hypothesis? What are the elements that make these people be in this camp and these people be in the other camp, and what are the passion points and the brand purpose and the usage moments, and how can I connect, how can I get messaging, offering, pricing connected in the proper way on the right channels, media and endorsers, and make that something that moves more people into the right camp. So I think that you do use qualitative research. That's why knowledge and insights start there. As I said, the fact that it is qualitative, the fact you cannot put, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have, the reason it's called research is because there is a method, there is scientific rigor, and you are applying it with discipline. And I think that the other part of the question has to do with where marketing is going. I think that when you could use what people refer to the spray and pray method, right? I just send messages. I just bombard you with messages. Well, interruption can create awareness, but only authenticity and relevance can build identification, aspiration, admiration, and eventually love. So we have to go beyond the reach and frequency. Reach and frequency only tells you how many and how many times have seen whatever you send them. We need engagement. We need engagement. We need metrics that tell you how engaged are they, and if that engagement was derived from what you did and what elements of what you did, and if you're putting them off, what are the elements that are making that happen? Because now you have to engage. You have to invite consumers into your brand and to engage and to let them touch your brand and in a way define which way your brand should move. And I think that is a different thing that you cannot do just with reach and frequency.
That's huge. That reminds me of a framework that we have at AnyRoad, which we always talk about one-dimensional data. Right? One-dimensional data is reach and frequency, exactly that. Right? Yeah. We talk about three-dimensional data, and three-dimensional data is impact data. So how are these experiences actually changing behavior? How are they actually changing brand love? And being able to put metrics to it and be able to optimize it.
Perfect. That's the way.
Yeah.
We need to do more of that.
You remind me about the future of experiences. There's a question here from Carlos Fonseca, which is, how will the post-COVID connection with brands be different? I know that a lot of companies right now are thinking, okay, well, how do we shift experiences? How do we connect with our consumers in a COVID world? I'm curious, what does that look like in a post-COVID world?
Yeah, that is a super good question, and I don't have a good answer, believe me. And the reason I don't have a good answer is because I think that we, unfortunately, are still not out of COVID. So it is very difficult to see what does post-COVID looks like. I think for a while, we will still have to wear our masks and get your flu vaccine. And eventually we will have a vaccine for COVID, which doesn't mean that you will be immune forever. It will mean that you will have to vaccinate again at some point. So I think that it's still going to look a little bit like COVID itself for a while. For me, it's very hard to think that if we wouldn't have this concern, we wouldn't want to go back to the offices. Maybe not every day. Maybe now that we have experienced this, we realize I don't need to commute every day. I don't need to go to every meeting. I can use these media. But the spontaneity that you get by walking in your office and running into people and having the pleasure of talking on free time, not on the 40 minutes that Zoom gave you, not on the 1 hour that you put in your calendar, but just you run into people, you're going to grab a sandwich to continue working and you run into somebody. That spontaneity brings a different level of connection and empathy in teams. And I think the same is going to happen for concerts and watching a nice video of music is super good, but it's not like being in a concert. Watching a soccer game by TV, you get probably 8 players, but there's 22 players. The only way of knowing how the game is happening is being there physically with all your eyes and all the wide open space. So I think that after we have this under control, we will start shifting to somewhere else. I don't think it's back to what it used to be, but I don't think it is what we have today. And so I think my best advice is just keep thinking about it, keep checking, because society is moving very, very fast in very, very different ways.
You mentioned looking at the screen. There's actually a question here from Allison Bench, which is, if you have ideas about creating meaningful virtual experiences. Right now we are in this space, and I know there's a question here from Malcolm Hudson as well, where during COVID, right, people are trying to understand, well, how do you engage with consumers where they are and online? Do you have any thoughts on that? And I know we're going to have to wrap in about a minute or so, but
I think there are fascinating ways in which you can do that, and the one that comes to mind is unfortunately not a Coke one necessarily. Although I'm sure if I think harder, I would find a Coke one. But Samsung did this advertising some time ago. They basically put ostriches, and one of the ostriches gets these Samsung goggles into it, and she feels that she can fly. So eventually, it's a story, and eventually she flies, and they just say we make things impossible possible, and I think that that is what augmented reality, virtual reality can do for you. The experiences and how you can expand experiences by doing that is superb. Now, normally it's something where you're going to be by yourself. It's probably it's not people watching or hugging your friends or jumping with your friends as you're hearing your favorite music. I think human beings they can always expand the amount of things where they find pleasure, and there are so many places where we need to touch the souls of our consumers to build strong brands.
That's fantastic. Francisco, we're out of time. I can't believe that was already half an hour. But
oh, yeah, it went fast.
I know, really fast. Thank you so much for joining us, being our very first guests on Polaris. We're looking forward to continuing the conversation with you. I know there's a couple of questions we didn't get to, so we're going to hope to get Francisco to answer them offline and send them to you. But thank you, everybody, for joining. Hope you have a wonderful day. Enjoy and stay safe. Take care.
Thank you.